Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome back to House of Footy. It's your boy Ray, and tonight I've got a full house with me. Welcome, Mac
Good evening.
and Gio.
What is good, guys?
On today's podcast, we're going to be reviewing the the Champions League action that took place midweek, and we'll also preview the Premier League action that takes place this weekend. Before we get into it, don't forget to follow us on our social media, both on X and Instagram. Our handle is at @houseof_footy. Also, don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe to us. We are on both Spotify and YouTube. And lastly, feel free to get in touch with us via email. We love hearing from you guys, and we want you guys getting involved. Our email is houseoffooty@hotmail.com. Let's get straight into the action then, Mac. We're going to keep it open-ended. Of course, 4 Champions League games took place over the last 2 days. We're going to leave Man City to the end and maybe skip over that a little bit because, of course, we're going to touch on Man City in the second part of this podcast. But, Mac, let's have you cook first. Any of these other 3 Champions League games stood out to you?
I think that what we had talked about in our preview podcast is the first game and the most important game, and the biggest takeaways is the Bayern Munich 3-0 Lazio. The reason being is we're going into that game. In our previous podcast, I talked about how Bayern Munich had really struggled against a low block and maybe the questions about Harry Kane and the position he would take up and kind of breaking that apart and trying to be able to deal with that. And you saw in this game, they did a much better job of that. If we start off initially kind of just changes to the team, Upamecano out, Kim out as well, and you had a new defensive two center half starting in the back four with Matthias de Ligt and Eric Dyer, Gio's favorite player, of course. And as well as Pavlovic starting in midfield alongside Goretzka, because I think Kimmich is out with an injury. So you saw a lot of changes. Kimmich started at the right back with Pavlovic starting in defensive mid. So you saw a lot of changes, a lot of shuffling of the deck for Thomas Tuchel, where it really was if you lose this game, you will lose your job tomorrow type of game. So for them to come out and get a 3-0 performance, I thought was very, very well done. You anticipated going this tie, Bayern Munich would have come out eventually, but playing at home, breaking that deadlock inside the first half as well to kind of ease the fans in and kind of let the momentum build from there. If we were to pick up one individual moment, even though, again, I think this is very much a pro Thomas Muller podcast, but I really wish he did not touch that second goal from Matthias de Ligt. The strike that he had, the connection that he had on that would have definitely put it into kind of the leading goal in Matthias de Ligt's highlight reel of goals, of course, being a center half, but one of the better Champions League goals we've seen in a while. So overall, what they were able to do against the low block, they had good individual moments. They made adjustments. So I don't think this is a new Bayern yet. It'll be interesting to see how they take this into the Bundesliga as well as continue on in the Champions League. But is this a good step for them to get to what we had all had initially pegged them as one of the favorites to win this competition? Yes. So they're on their way. They still have a lot to grow and learn and be able to play with each other. But at least the major take that we can get from this game is, of course, Thomas Tuchel still keeps his job.
Okay, well, straight off of that, Gio, and of course, Mac, you can answer this as well. Do you think that the lit shot was going towards net? Of course, it was a great technique used, and it looked good. I'm just not 100% convinced that it was going to go in. But of course, Thomas Muller gets the vital touch that really puts it past the keeper, and from there, it was really the game kinda was done, I would say, because Lazio would have to come out and really try to score themselves, leaving them further exposed. And of course, Bayern scored 3 goals, didn't concede one in this game, and they completely turned around. Gio, what were your thoughts on this overall result?
No, shout out to my defenders. I'm gonna give him that goal. Shout outs to also all the people who told Vincent Kompany not to shoot that shot, and he shot that shot. So same thing applies here. I don't think everybody was expecting him to take that shot. So I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. Again, great technique. You can only hope those ones go in, and you can only hope that you can score a banger like those when you play yourself. But I think to touch on this Bayern team very quickly, again, the Upamecano and whatever pairing that was out. Kim, I believe, and then Eric Dyer, and sorry, who's the other one? Matthias de Ligt. It's a good switch up. I'm surprised Tuchel didn't switch up the lineup earlier throughout the season to figure out what worked for him, or if just a different spark off the bench. I feel like a Bayern from top to bottom as an organization really stand by what they do, and have brought in, you know, fantastic players year after year. That's kind of their way of doing things. They like to bring in German players. They like to bring in the best players that they can possibly bring in, and they typically grow their players as well. But I feel like they've kind of lost that a little. And have been too reliant on just buying the right players, and they haven't had the best luck there. So they just need to go back to basics and really figure things out and try new things. And obviously, I think they're going to stick with Tuchel for the time being. But again, I don't think he's safe till the end of the season. But I think he should continue trying new things because at this point, he has nothing to lose. It feels like the next loss at any point will be his last game managed. So I think he shouldn't, hold back on these quote unquote risks and do what he thinks is best and not what, say upper management thinks. We're paying this player this much. He should be playing majority of the minutes.
Oh well, you guys are, I guess, a little bit more, more critical on Tuchel because I think this could be the start of something. Not necessarily new, but this could be the start of something for Bayern. Definitely looked like they picked things up after they scored. Easy to say, but obviously after you score, you're on a high. Typically, that's what people say. It's actually the you're most likely to concede right after you score. But it showed Bayern really needed that goal first, and it really just snowballed from there. I did want to also pick out a moment right before Bayern scored, the Immobile header that he unfortunately did not get on target. That would have changed the game. But ultimately, Harry Kane putting in the goods, and really, even though there's a lot of criticism of him not, I mean, big games, he pulled through in this fixture, and of course now Bayern are through. And I guess the question that I gotta ask you, Gio, because I think Mac kind of alluded to this already, is can this win propel them to chase down Bayern Leverkusen, who are 10 points ahead of them? I guess just a quick question for you there, Gio.
It's a tough ask. But when you for any sport, teams go on runs on quote unquote hot streaks, but they also do go on cold streaks. Do I bank on Bayern Leverkusen to go on a cold streak? No, because I think they have good enough game management, to not let games slip away as much as they have. Yes, they have, narrowly lost games and have come back to win very late in the game. But I think, game management, and also Xavi Alonso knowing what's to lose and what's at hand. I think even if one or two bad results come, he'll understand the situation and kind of mitigate those points lost. So I don't think they'll be able to do it. Yes, they can shorten the gap, but I don't think they can come back completely from it.
Ooh, big shout there. Okay, well, Mac, I'm gonna move it on. We're actually gonna talk now. I guess still Gio. I want to hear your thoughts because PSG went against Real Sociedad, and even though it was a game away, Kylian Mbappe just showed his class in this game, scoring, I think it was the only 2 goals that PSG scored in this game, and really dragging them through and putting them through to the next round of the knockout stages. So, Gio, what are your overall thoughts for this result?
Uh, Honestly, Mbappe looked fantastic. We know what he can do in open space, and when he is given that long ball into space, it's you're asking for trouble. You're asking for trouble. The first goal, what a fake, had the defender spinning for the wrong reasons. Anthony spins one way, but this guy spins a different way. It was a tough watch. As a defender myself, I can only begin to feel how he feels. Um, but yeah, I just want Luis Enrique and the PSG board to keep the same energy. This guy has brought in countless amount of players for you on your behalf due to his friendships and his likeness from players. And for you to bench him in the League One games and to sub him out early in League One games, but not to sit him early in a Champions League game where you can potentially move further and earn more money. I just need you guys to keep the same energy. Don't do that to that. Don't do that to the kid.
Yeah, no, great shout there. Mac, then same question. What were your thoughts?
Fuck him, bench him. Like, what are you talking about? And they have to learn how to play without him. And you don't want to take the risk in the Champions League. You can't take the least.
Oh, so it's a risk now in the Champions League. So learn how to play without him in the Champions League.
They need to advance this season, and in all likelihood, next season they're not going to win that. They still very likely could win Liga next season. So I think they have to get comfortable with the idea without playing without him. On that end. So I think it's kind of a damned if you don't, because you have to at some point make the transition. So I think taking it in small increments makes sense. Down for that, happy for that, as well as I think they both can feel hard done by each other. So they're definitely going to, in the public, undercut each other. If we go back to this individual game, what I very much liked about this PSG team, because in terms of comparison to previous years' iterations, where you saw it kind of was not too dissimilar, I would say, to the MSN Barca, where there's clearly 8 players defending, 3 attacking, and it is what it is, right? And there is that delineation. Whereas in this team, especially in possession, the way that they were able to deal with Real Sociedad's press, I thought was very impressive. And how are they able to break the lines? And what this does in comparison to previous years for Mbappe is where if they are able to break the lines and break press, like they have been able to do in comparison to previous years, it gives Mbappe more situations where he's 1-on-1, 1-on-2, 1-on-3, with a couple other attackers joining in. Whereas before, since most teams aren't really going to try to press that front three that you may have seen from PSG, he didn't have as much area and behind, especially in the Champions League. So I think this is an interesting look, an interesting kind of vibe that you can get, where you're seeing Mbappe kind of play in different areas of the pitch that we may have not seen as much previously. So I like that, especially when you're looking at Ousmane Dembele. Traditionally before, he very much was a winger. In this game, he played really much as a 10 and floated all the way across the pitch. At some points, he's in the left wing, some points he's at the right wing. He can kind of float, and it was unusual for him because some coaches may be a little bit worried playing him that centrally, where he might get a little bit more knocked around. And of course, we know the jokes that can kind of fit into there. But if he's able to be the straw that stirs the drink in behind kind of a front two with Mbappe and Barcola, and you still have the midfield runners behind them kind of doing a lot of the legwork from Dembele. I like that look. It's a different viewpoint than we've seen from PSG, and similar to what we talked about with Bayern Munich. They need to make changes because in a different way, time is running short for them in their opportunity really to win the Champions League.
Yeah, well, that's going to be interesting to see how they match up in others, in the next stage against whoever they draw. But just wanted to bring it back before we move on from PSG. Kylian Mbappe, just going to read out, he has 46 Champions League goals. He's turning 24 this year. 11 goals in 11 games in the Champions League knockout stage. If that doesn't speak for itself and a big-time player, I don't think anything else will. Of course, him coming up and putting those types of performances as well in the World Cup stages, especially even in the World Cup final. I'm very excited to see what he does for his future team. I know you mentioned here that could he maybe stay at PSG if they win the Champions League? I don't think so, and I also don't think they're going to win the Champions League. So I'm just going to answer that for us. Unfortunately, I don't think so. He's destined to go to Madrid, likely to further that goal tally and possibly win a couple of Champions Leagues himself. Let's move on then to the last game that we'll cover in detail, and that's, of course, Gio, one of the teams that we kind of have an allegiance to, but Madrid didn't really make it that easy for themselves. 1-1 on the end of the day. Went through by that one goal that they scored at RB Leipzig. But overall, what were your takes from this game, Gio?
Not good enough, really. If I'm gonna be completely honest, fanboying aside, yes, the counterattack goal was nice, but I think overall, just defensive shape wasn't good enough. Overall passing, ability to keep the ball, just overall, not your typical Madrid quality that we kind of expect. And if yes, they got through this time, but you know, had they were a little bit more careless, we could be speaking about a big upset. So if they want to succeed further in this competition, I think they need to tighten ship up a little more. Granted, some players are coming back from injury, this, that, and fourth, getting back and more acquainted, more minutes under the belt. But um, again, if they want to succeed any further, they have to do better and just play better, like the Madrid we're used to.
Yeah, and then same question to you, I guess, Mac. Leipzig, I think, had a lot of chances in this game, and against Real Madrid, granted, they have a lot of injuries still. Makeshift team, Jude Bellingham coming back from injury recently as well, and is still playing without a recognized striker, at least to start off with. Could be said, argued that they were lucky to get through in this tie. What are your thoughts there, Mac?
I think that's accurate. If you look at just the first half performance, I would say RB Leipzig should have been up. They had a couple opportunities. They fluffed their chances, which again, that's the reason why they didn't go through. They kind of had their destiny in their own hands, made the mistakes, weren't able to follow through and be able to create those finishes that are needed in those key moments in a Champions League tie. And Bayern and Real Madrid were good enough in their moments to take that 2-0 lead across the aggregate and be able to comfortably kind of absorb still a goal against at the Bernabeu. So overall, they have really no one to blame but themselves. But it does leave me asking questions of Real Madrid because over the last 5 games, they've only scored 6 goals since their recent performance against 4-0 win against Girona, which probably felt like they've wrapped up La Liga at that moment. So is that them taking the foot off the gas a little bit because they feel comfortable that they think that they should just based off talent kind of easily go by RB Leipzig, but I don't think that they have a lot of the names on the team sheet definitely have that talent and are projected to have that talent, but they haven't really been there, done it yet for quite a few of them. So I still have some questions about how they'll perform for the rest of the season. But I think that considering I think we'll learn a lot more about this team and I guess how a lot of these individual players are going to map out in their career during their next round of fixtures in the Champions League. Because seems like I said, La Liga should almost be done. They should be fairly comfortable there. But if they come out with this lackluster of an effort that they did in terms of the day of recording today against opposition, they could easily see themselves out of the competition. Because from now on in, it seems like we're only going to be facing the best of the best teams in all likelihood. So I think we'll learn a lot. A little bit worried, but they, like you said, they did just enough to be able to get through.
Yeah, and that's exactly where I was gonna go. I don't think. Well, I think Madrid are like you, Mac, are very lucky to have gone through. 2 goals that they scored was one banger from Brahim Diaz in the first leg. Nothing really stood out for me in that game, and this one, of course, the Bellingham drive, and then finding Vinicius, who finished it quite well. And those were the 2 goals. That's pretty much all Madrid had to offer, I feel like, in this tie. On the flip side, RB Leipzig, I feel like if they took Madrid, if they faced another team in this tie, went on to play Madrid in the next fixture, that would have been interesting because I feel like if they had that sort of win and advancing to the next stage, that could have been interesting. But if they did beat Madrid here, I think next stage is kind of where it would have ended for them. So unfortunately for them, I wouldn't have pegged them as favorites. But I guess just to wrap up this part of the podcast, I want to ask Gio, of the teams that went through, of course, Bayern, PSG, Man City, and Real Madrid. You'd argue that those 4 probably make up the favorites to win this year's competition. Um,
Yes.
do you peg Madrid as one of those favorites at this point? If we were to ask you that,
Yeah, I think you do have to give them the benefit of the doubt as they have succeeded so often in this competition. They've they've won by large margins and they've won by narrow margins. Sometimes they just do enough, and we kind of say, "Oh, Madrid got away with one," but sometimes that's all they need. So because they have won so much and so often in this competition, it's hard to count them out. It's hard to count Carlo Ancelotti out. I think he knows how to get the best of his guys. Yes, they did play poorly today, but given the stakes that they're in now, I think we should be expecting a much well-rounded performances, much better performances as well going forward.
Okay, well, I guess Max, same question to you. Anything stand out from these four teams that made it through?
No, I think actually I'm going to shoot my shot here. I actually would knock them down and flip them over with Inter Milan and Arsenal instead of the Bayern Munich and Real Madrid as favorites based off recent form. Since the turn of the new year, though these two teams have left me a lot of questions, whereas we've seen probably the best performance thus far from both Inter Milan and Arsenal since the turn of the calendar. So I think those teams, if not are above, if at worst on level in terms of if you were asking me who are favorites to make it up, of course, other than the team that we tend to talk about, which we'll talk about shortly, of course, Man City, still the number one by themselves favorite for this competition, of course.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say we're not going to get too much into it because we're going to see what the what the draw brings us. But I think it's fair to say City at this stage looks like it is by far the favorites. But we'll take a quick break here, guys. We'll come back and talk a little bit about Man City's Champions League game, and then we'll spring right into the Premier League action that's going to be coming up this weekend. So stay with us, guys. Welcome back to Hustle Footy, guys. We are going to continue our discussion now. Just quickly wrapping up the Champions League action from Man City. Really not much to talk about there. They won 3-1 on the day. 3 goals in the first half, 2 goals actually in the first 10 minutes, and it really looked like it was wrapped from there. A lot of rotation, of course, with the game ahead facing Liverpool this weekend, and that's the one that we're going to really talk about. So I guess I'll toss it first to you, Mac. What are what are you looking out for this big showdown between Man City and Liverpool at Anfield this weekend?
Yeah, I think if selfishly, and I think it makes more sense to preface this game. It is actually the Arsenal game against Brentford that's taking place beforehand, because Arsenal very much is going to come, if they come up with a win, would be top of the table and leaves both these teams under pressure to win. Whereas for me, if I'm Liverpool, I'm looking to, I know it might be a little bit short-sighted, but I'm still very much in a position where I'm looking to survive. If I come up with a tie from this game, I think that's a good result. And it sets themselves still to be above Man City. Arsenal have I would argue, the toughest run-in, so they should still be very, very comfortable to see themselves out if they stay above Manchester City. So for me, that's the disparity. Or I feel like Man City have to come out for the kind of the throat right away. They have to come out and win. I think they have to come out and dominate as well, because if you leave any breathing room for a clock team at Anfield, no matter who's on the starting 11, anything could still happen. So I very much feel like if Man City are to win this game, they have to come out with a couple goals early and to see themselves out and control and dominate possession from there, versus allowing the Anfield crowd to be able to get into it at all. The good part for Liverpool, correct me if I'm wrong, Ray, reports are that Mohamed Salah is back and ready to play, which is key for them. The midfield battle, I feel like still might be where they can kind of win and lose it if the Endos, the McAllisters, the Harvey Elliott's, if Szoboszlai starting in the midfield, he was started off the bench on the weekend. Interesting to see if he does play tomorrow or the day that this podcast releases in the Europa League. I think that very much is where, if Liverpool can do just enough, just kind of manage their assignments, make sure that they're able to kind of take on key positions and be able to hit Man City in transitional moments, I think that they have a pathway to success and have probably the best template of a way to get at a Manchester City team. But they need to do enough there to give themselves enough opportunities to get into those stages of the pitch. So overall, very, very excited for this game. I think this very much can be a title decider in a lot of ways if either team comes out with 3 points. And if either team does come out with 3 points, they should see themselves as kind of the nailed-on favorite for the Premier League.
Yeah, that in itself just tells us how big this game is. We can talk about maybe what it means if both teams don't, if either team loses. But of course, Gio, I'll toss it to you as well to preview it. Even though Liverpool are at home, are City favorites for this game, Gio, considering the amount of injuries and sort of the run of form that they are in currently? What do you think, Gio?
I think you have to. I think every year we talk about City blunders. The past 3 years, not every year. The past 3 years we talk about City blunders. Oh, is this the beginning of the downfall of City? Is this where they kind of fumbled the league title? What's going on with City? And then they go on their late run of consistency, game after game after game. Just proving why they are champions and proving why they have been the top dogs for quite some time now. And I think they are in the midst of that run. Now, obviously, in the past weekend, the Manchester Derby 3-1 against Copenhagen, 3-1 again. They're beating opponents convincingly. Granted, are the opponents that good? I wouldn't say so. And this Liverpool side is much better as a whole. But again, the injuries will speak for themselves. It just doesn't seem like a good matchup. I think in terms of scoring, we saw it today on the score sheet as well with the Kanji scoring. I think they can score from all three levels of the field. Your forwards, your midfielders, and your defenders. It's going to be tough for Liverpool if your front guys aren't really contributing as much. Where else are you going to look to for goals? If Darweezy isn't that guy for you that day, who are you going to lean on? Is it going to have to come down to a Virgil van Dijk 98th minute, header again? Like it's hard. It's hard. So yes, Liverpool got a lot on their plate right now, but I do think City are favorites and should undoubtedly be considered favorites going into this match. And Liverpool fans, I would say, should not have too high hopes.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's ultimately City. I do agree should be favored based on the personnel, and as well, Liverpool, considering the fact that this is the last time they'll play City and or Arsenal, have that sort of in their back pocket. Whereas, still, Arsenal do have to face Man City at the Etihad later in the season. There could be a possibility that either team drops points or both teams drop points. So I think with that being said, Liverpool might be a little bit more conservative. What do you think the approach would be for this match?
I think what I want to ask you, specifically you, because Liverpool, even though they don't face Arsenal. Wait, no, are they scheduled to face Arsenal? I have a TBD for July 31st, 2024. Is that a makeup game? There was no makeup game this year. They've already played
that would be after the season.
Okay, gotcha.
July 31st.
Yes. So, yes, you're right. My apologies. I think that's for off-season games in a different country and all like that. My apologies. But they're running after this game. They still have to both play Tottenham. They have to play Aston Villa. They have to play teams like West Ham. And Liverpool still have to play Manchester United. So they still have tough fixtures. They just don't have competition with their direct rivals. I think they still have to come out. And even if they just get a tie, I think that's good enough considering the situation. And if I'm them, even if that does potentially put Arsenal above them, let's be realistic. We've seen Arsenal slip up with more of a point lead last year. And I think Liverpool would still feel confident itself in chasing them down and winning their fixtures and having kind of their destiny in their own hands. And even though not necessarily having 100% control of that, but be comfortable that, hey, these other teams around us, they're going to make mistakes too. In this individual fixture, if we went to the beginning of the season and say, hey, if we got a point at Anfield, and even if you're against Man City at any time period, that's generally a decent enough result. So that's how I feel about this individual fixture. The interesting part for me is where I can assume, correct me if I'm wrong, Ray, and this is what I want to ask you, is where I assume how Liverpool are going to line up in attacking is going to be Nunez, Salah, Diaz, in all likelihood. In midfield, in all likelihood, it's going to be Endo, Szoboszlai, McAllister. In all likelihood. The question for me is in defensive third, because you're going to have Connor Bradley start if Trent Alexander-Arnold still ruled out for this game. Van Dijk, Konate. What do you do at that left back position? That's my question for them, because we've seen Joe Gomez deputized there. We've seen Tsimikas. I think he's not injured at the moment as well. Who knows, really? There's so many Liverpool injuries. It's hard to keep track of. But for me, I'm a little bit questioned about that position, because we saw in last weekend's game against Manchester United, Victor Lindelof was kind of dealing with the Foden situation on that right wing. And if you don't play that matchup correctly, as we saw, he can have a great impact on the game. So I don't know, what would you think is the better way for, I guess, Liverpool to tackle and deal with the left side of their defense, especially because it looks like Andy Robertson is still out for this game?
Yeah, that's a tough part. Likely Gomez to start if it's not Tsimikas or Robertson, because realistically he's the best sort of, apart from Kanate, the best one-on-one defender that Liverpool have. Connor Bradley will start, it looks like, because Trent Alexander-Arnold will be missing from this game as well. And yeah, it's tough. Foden, I expect him to have a really big game here. The way he sort of played in the Manchester derby, rested in this midweek against Copenhagen. I think he just has that run of form where in previous seasons as well, I recall the season Liverpool actually won the Premier League. Behind closed doors, Foden hit Liverpool with a couple goals and winning, I think, at Anfield as well. So that stands out with him. I feel like this is his opportunity to really put himself up there. If City were to win the Premier League, could be shouts for him to be Premier League player of the season. Because I just think if at this point City win this game, Gio, I think it's pretty much wraps. They would, if Arsenal and City both win their games, City still has I think 1 point lead over Arsenal, and then they have to take Arsenal at the Etihad. So I think pretty much this is a win it, and it's all in your hands, City. It's a must win for them. And I think the last thing is Alisson, who in the first tie was huge for Liverpool against Man City. He will be out, and it's going to be Kelleher playing in this game. So we'll see what happens there. But Gio, what are your thoughts there? Is this pretty much wraps, or pretty much as good as wraps if City win this game at Anfield this weekend?
I think if Man City win this game, the pressure isn't on them anymore. It's no longer on them. It's on Arsenal and it's on Liverpool. They know they've been in this situation before. It's nothing new to them. Yes, is it strange that they even let it get to the same position again? Yeah, because why would you? It's unnecessary pressure. But have they gotten out of it before? Yeah, and they've gone on to win the league. So if they do win, I do think they will be favorites again to win the league. So yeah, and then all the pressure will be back on Liverpool and Arsenal. I think if Man City go on and win the league, I think Liverpool will feel very hard done. Obviously injuries ramping up in the wrong time of the season. They're just so consistent, playing so well, prior to all those injuries too. So yeah, no, it should be an interesting race at the end of the day.
Go ahead, Max.
So I think City have to, if they win this game, then the title for them becomes the game at Arsenal. At the Etihad versus Arsenal, because that is definitely, they had lost against Arsenal towards the beginning of this year. Very different teams, a scummy result, if you remember the deflection off of Martinelli's shot. But they're playing at the Etihad, so as long as they walk away with something from that game, I think that would be the then title decider. Because Arsenal still have a difficult run in as well. All three of these teams have to face Tottenham. Arsenal still have to face Manchester United, still have to play a couple of London derbies against Chelsea. They have to play against Aston Villa as well. So they have very much a tough run in as well. All these teams do. So these games against each other could be the separator. The interesting part for Arsenal is because the Chelsea game has been postponed, that after this Brentford game, they have Porto, and then they don't play again until the end of the month at Man City. So still a lot of time until then. We have this game first, but this is definitely setting ourselves up for a March where we can feel like the title could be decided.
Can we call this March Madness now? Label it as the footy March Madness because of the implications. Because we're going to move on now, Gio, to another game that has a lot of riding on it. Aston Villa will host Spurs this weekend. Aston Villa actually facing a former Liverpool player, Ajax, in the Europa League tomorrow or today, day of recording. So Actually, sorry, in the Conference League. So that's going to be interesting to see what squad they come out with. But the previous game they faced, these two teams faced each other, and then with a 2-1 win from Aston Villa. I think it was at Spurs. So big result there. What do you think will happen in this game between these two clubs, Gio?
Very interesting. I think both teams coming off positive results. 4 and 5 facing each other. 5 points separating Villa and Spurs. Yeah, no, I think Spurs again will feel hard done this season with the amount of injuries they've received early on in the season. Obviously with health not being an issue, we saw how fun that team was to watch. How many goals they were scoring, almost scoring at will, even on these counterattacks. And plus the Coglu, holding a high line with 9 guys was absolute madness. But yeah, guys are coming back. Guys are slowly coming back, and we're starting to see that team that we're used to seeing early on in the season. But that's not to take away from what Villa's going to bring to this game. Yes, they had a little rocky slump, but now they're back and they're back scoring goals. And again, that attack, that midfield leading into the attack has been so potent this season. I think I think it will be quite the high scoring affair, and both teams will benefit from that because they both are able to counterattack so well. But again, this is one of those games that's going to be won by how clinical their front three is. You know, Ollie Ollie Watkins has no, yeah, Ollie Watkins has been fantastic, and I think the link up play will come down to will will ultimately decide whether or not Ollie Watkins has a great game, and when Ollie Watkins has a great game, Villa oftentimes do go on and win the game. So that's probably the key matchups. Is going to be each team's front threes going into it.
Great shout there, Gio. Of course, I wanted to mention our Spurs are have a big miss because my boy Richarlison likely out, so they won't have a striker here in this game. But I'm not sure if you recall, Mac, this game between these two clubs early in the season left us with, I think, 3 or 4 offside goals that were called back by VAR. So I expect a lot more of the same, and like Gio said, pretty high scoring. What do you think will happen in this game?
I think if you were to ask me, I'm going to bank on Spurs to be able to come out and come through this because I don't anticipate too much of a change from Aston Villa, whereas I personally feel like Spurs, and something that I've talked about where the teams have been getting more and more comfortable playing against this Villa high line. So in just a couple moments they can get right. I think they have the opportunities and the capabilities in the final third to create enough problems where they're eventually going to be able to break down the Villa team. Whereas defensively, I have never felt, weirdly enough, more confident in a swashbuckling side in their individual matchup, where I think that they have enough to be able to handle with the Watkins Bailly situation. They should be comfortable there. But I think it's fairly enough a coin toss. I wouldn't be surprised if the teams come up to win this. I'm just leaning slightly more Spurs. The interesting part for me, though, is something I highlighted earlier, is where Spurs still have to face Arsenal, Liverpool, Man City. They have a tough run in. So they need this game in all likelihood if they want to be able to make Champions League. I was recently looking over weirdly enough, the coefficient rankings for the Champions League for next season. It looks like England wasn't awarded like the 5th spot for Champions League. So it's only really the top 4 as of right now that are going to make it through. So Aston Villa 4th. I think there's a 5-point difference between these two teams. Spurs need to win. It's funny that both Newcastle and Manchester United, because of how poorly they played in the Champions Leagues, made it more difficult for them to make it to next year. Thought that was funny. Side note, sorry, Gio. But overall, it sets us up for a very fun fixture here where Spurs need to come out to win if they are going to continue having the possibility of making the Champions League. Because if they don't and they were to lose this game, that leaves them 8 points out. And I think that's almost done and dusted at this point with that points separation between those two teams. How do you feel about that, Ray?
Yeah, I think Aston Villa win this game. It's pretty much done there. Spurs do have a game in hand, but like you said, they do have a rough. Both teams have sort of a similar run into the end of the season, but I just feel like Aston Villa, they win this game, solidify themselves as the fourth place team in the league, and then we'll have that in at least that buffer zone to prevent them from. I don't think Spurs will be able to catch them. As well, very much like Gio said, I'm kind of surprised you're betting against Aston Villa, considering Ollie Watkins, his basically form right now. I think it's crazy how he's played so far, and I think against Spurs, who if they obviously need the win, they might leave themselves exposed. Romero might come in with a rash challenge, or when Romero comes in with a rash challenge,
Absolutely.
he'll be on thin ice. So I just feel like it's gonna, like you said, it's gonna be a high scoring game. I think Aston Villa ultimately, at this point, if you're looking at both teams, I think Aston Villa are probably the more well balanced and prepared team for the Champions League, as opposed to Spurs. Of course, without any signings that could occur with the extra money that they get from the offseason. But I just think Aston Villa have it in them to win this game, and then if they do, it's pretty much wrapped there. I guess final thoughts on that situation, Gio. Who do you have making that top four at the end of the season?
I can confidently say it very well not be. It very well might not be the team that's on my jersey right now. They just have. I would be shocked. I mean, I feel like I'm being harsh, but I would even be shocked if they even made a Europa League spot. Just because they haven't looked great without Hodgland. So obviously Hodgland is still expected to miss a good amount of time, and Luke Shaw is as well. So things just aren't looking too bright. Just when you thought things would turn around, the 180 and turn the opposite direction again. So unfortunate, but hey, it will be another year of building and working towards consistency. So that's always a good shout.
I wanted to, as on that note, want to bring up West Ham and Newcastle, who are just directly below them. West Ham 2 wins in the last 2 games, facing Burnley next. That's an easy dub, and then Newcastle are facing Chelsea. The way Chelsea's been playing this season, that's another easy dub. So I don't know. I kind of have to agree with you, Gio. I maybe overstepped and shouted out Man U and jinxed them for that top four spot. It looks like it's going to be a little bit more tough for them, considering Newcastle and West Ham sort of getting those results. I guess finally, Mac, what are your thoughts on that situation?
I think the top four race, everything going on in terms of even the Europa League spots, the Conference League spots, there's still a lot to play for, because the cross matches that these teams have to end up playing against each other, there's going to be so much movement, so much difficulty. I think the only kind of guarantee that we do have is where outside of in the 4 or 5 position is where it's going to be either Spurs or Aston Villa, as we have talked about. There's no other situation there, and this game can be very much an indicator of what ends up happening in those positions. And then aside from that, everything else towards the bottom of the table, I think that we might have a quick little juggle around to see what happens. The only other thought, maybe to go towards the complete other end of the table, is that if you do have the time, everyone out there, take a look at the Crystal Palace Luton matchup this weekend. That's going to be fascinating for a relegation battle. That's the only other pickup relay I have for this weekend, because if either team comes up with 3 points, they either drag themselves deeper. If Crystal Palace don't win, they're in the relegation battle, and it's a tough days for them. If Luton don't win, they're in all likely go and allow Crystal Palace to be able to pick up all 3 points. They're likely kind of pushing themselves further down the table. So that's another interesting matchup. So overall, very, very excited for the Premier League this weekend. There should be a whole lot of movement, exciting topics for us to talk about on our next podcast.
Yeah, exactly. And that's all we have for you guys today. So if you guys like what you heard, please like and subscribe to us on our social media. That's at @houseof_footy. If you have any comments, suggestions, or general banter, get in touch with us via email as well, houseoffooty@hotmail.com. Next time you hear from us will be Tuesday, when we review this weekend's Premier League games, which is going to be a packed one. But until then, thank you, Mac, for joining us.
Peace out.
Thank you, Gio.
Good night, folks.
See you guys soon.